Ever since humans started gaining an interest in computers and other technology, the time it takes to make the technology more complex has been decreasing. This technology allows us to make hard work easy, and because it is human nature to want to make things as easy as possible, we have grown and are growing more dependent on this new technology every day. Well, at the moment, this technology has been very helpful. If we no longer had the technology to help us, we'd be no better off than Squizgar Squigelf.
What is wrong with this dumb dildo to give us all the free coffee in the world with no instruction on how to cook it?
Well, as Conrad Zeuss's Z1 was the first computer created, computers were scarce, expensive, and unreliable until the 1970s. The first computer available to consumers was called the Selby and began being sold in 1974. Through the 70s, a few other companies began trying to make computers. The most successful of these was the 1975 release of the Altair, as it was affordable, expandable, and the most available. The only downside to these computers, other than their difficulty of operation, was that they were required to be assembled and made to be working by the consumer, and this wasn't an easy task for most people. Since most people found coding on the Altair difficult, Ed Roberts, Bill Gates, and Paul Allen began working to produce a coding language for the Altair to process. This would slightly reduce the amount of effort that would be needed to operate the Altair. They were able to adopt a language known as BASIC that was originally created by John Kimeny and Thomas Kurtz to work with the Altair. The downside to BASIC was that it needed much more memory than what came with the standard Altair. Knowing that this would be problematic, Ed Roberts tried to make a circuit board that had enough memory but failed due to cheap parts and bad design. BASIC looked to be a failure until Bob Marsh began making better designed boards that had the required memory. Since the Altair was cheap and BASIC made it easier to use, it was a significant step towards computers becoming a part of everyday life. However, operating it was still a nightmare for most people. This nightmare seemed to draw closer to an end with the second generation of computers. Steve Wozniak and Steve Jobs of Apple Computers made the first computer of this generation in 1976. This computer was called the Apple I and came as a fully assembled circuit board, leaving the consumer to only find a case, keyboard, and display. This was yet another major step towards computers becoming a part of everyday life. Since computers were becoming easier to acquire and use, several companies began to create software that would simplify tasks for the consumer. Most notable of these was VisiCalc and WordStar. VisiCalc allowed the user to make spreadsheets without much effort, while WordStar was a basic text editor. Both of these became very popular because businesses and consumers could have many documents without taking up much physical space. The first operating system was called QDOS and was distributed originally in 1981. The name was changed to MS-DOS after Microsoft had acquired all the licenses for it. MS-DOS then became the standard operating system for most personal computers. However, computers were still completely text-based. Their first graphical user interface-based computer was the Apple Lisa. However, the Apple Lisa didn't do too well because of its high price tag, lack of programs, and inability to run well. Apple seemed to fix these problems with the introduction of the Macintosh computer. However, they are still fairly expensive for most people to be able to afford. Moore's law states that computers double in efficiency every 24 months. This law led computers to be cheaper and faster as time went on. Since this has been true for the most part, over 81% of American households now own at least one computer. Due to the usefulness of computers, few people will still do things manually and the rest will lose those skills, leaving most people clueless if we ever needed to do those things manually again. Before all the technology came into play, people did everything manually. However, since humans saw how easy it was to work with the aid of technology, and because we're lazy just like big fat cats, we have been naturally drawn to technology. One of the most consuming technologies was Alexander Graham Bell's invention of the telephone. Before the invention of the telephone, people had to search for other people manually. However, once the telephone was created, they could simply make a call and get a hold of the person they needed to talk to. The telephone was improved even further in 1973 with the invention of the cell phone. The cell phone allowed people to carry around a telephone, making it possible to get calls anywhere, anytime. Another technology that we've grown far too dependent on is the automobile. While vehicles are obviously much quicker than animals or any other means of transportation, it has gotten to the point where walking anywhere is almost completely unheard of. In today's society, people are almost completely dependent on technology. If you ask a teenager to look something up, they'll more than likely jump on Google or Wikipedia before the word library crosses their mind. This is more than likely due to our generation growing up around around computers, and it is a real-life example of how dependent we're becoming on technology. At the moment, MIT is developing a machine that will give people a type of sixth sense. This machine would allow people to simply look at things and get information about it. An example would be that it could choose the better choice for you when shopping. This would remove natural tuition or any other thinking from shopping. If this technology were to ever stop helping us shop, we'd probably end up making terrible decisions.
Hey, Chief, this stuff good for soup? No. Ah! That's a yes.
They've also made it so that when you meet someone, it instantly looks that person up on the internet and displays keywords about them. This technology would remove the necessity to talk to people to gain information about them, which is a key element in developing our social skills. While this technology could be useful, imagine how difficult it could be to do anything on your own after growing dependent on it.
Wowie!
So what should you take from this video? Unless we change the role that technology has in our everyday lives and start doing some things manually, we could grow too dependent on the technology and fail if it is ever unavailable. In another scenario, technology could become too complex, leading to robots taking over the world. Remember, nobody wants to be a robot's bitch.
Oh, that's brutal.